It's time for me to give my predictions for the up-and-coming, unbelievably stacked fight night headlined by Beneil Dariush and Arman Tsarukyan. It goes down in Austin, Texas this Saturday. And aside from the big 4 fights on the main card, there's a lot of up-and-coming talent that's also going to be showcased on the prelims. Some of the fights are going to be stinky, and I'll let you guys know which ones are worth watching because, trust me, there are a couple that are truly going to be stinky that I honestly wouldn't even mind missing myself. I'll watch all of them. But for the most part, there's a lot of up-and-coming talent. And of course, as always, before we get into it, if you're just interested in hearing my take on one of these fights, check the timestamps. I have them in the description. And without further ado, let's get into it. The first fight on the early prelims, Veronica Macedo Hardy, Dan Hardy's wife, versus Jamey-Lyn Horth. Okay, now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I haven't seen any of Jamey-Lyn Horth's fights, or maybe I have, but I've not paid attention to them because she's only fought once in the UFC. She has a great-looking record at 6-0. If you were to look at Veronica Hardy's record, you wouldn't be impressed. Not at all would you be impressed. She took a multiple-year layoff because she had a bunch of concussions, and then she meets Dan Hardy. She starts dating Dan Hardy. They get married. She comes back and absolutely styles on the mega favorite Juliana Miller. Remember, I picked Veronica Hardy to win that fight despite her being a massive underdog because I was thinking, listen, man, if Dan Hardy is in your corner, already taking into account how passionate he is for MMA, the kind of mind he has for MMA, if this guy's going to be invested in his wife's career, you already know he's going to have the perfect game plan. You already know he's going to have an unbelievable amount of attention to detail in the process of their training camp. It's like having Morpheus in your corner. And I don't think that Veronica Hardy's losing to anybody until she really gets up to the upper echelon. And we're talking about like the top 8 women in that division. So she's 28. She's still improving, training with Dan Hardy. You already know the game plan is going to be fantastic. She looked great in every single realm of the fight game. The grappling looked good. Juliana Miller was like a really good jiu-jitsu girl. Veronica Hardy out-grappled her, got out of bad positions as well, imposed her will, outstruck her on the feet too, and that was a girl that had a massive reach advantage. Unless Jamey-Lyn Horth is going to be like a future UFC champion or like a multiple-time contender, or I'm talking about like title challenger, she's probably not going to win this one. Again, Jamey-Lyn Horth probably got into MMA a couple of years ago. Veronica Hardy's been around, and she's with Dan Hardy, who's going to be like the perfect coach. So I think that she's going to win this fight by decision or submission. Let's get on to it, guys, because I already know they're studying Jamey-Lyn Horth tape all the time. Wellington Turman versus Jared Gooden. Now, this is one of those stinkers. Now, I know some of you guys just scratched your head and said, whoa, what do you mean, man? Wellington Turman's like one of the most entertaining fighters in the world. You absolute casual. I don't give a fuck if he trains with Alex Pereira. He's boring as hell. All right? Jared Gooden's also not very good. Jared Gooden only has 1 win in the UFC, and that was a KO over Nicholas Stolze. Outside of that, and it was a big, ugly arm punch. Outside of that, he's lost every single one of his UFC fights. He's lost to guys like Abu Bakr and Randy Brown. And I rewatched Wellington Turman's fight with Randy Brown, and he looked a lot better than Jared Gooden looked against Randy Brown. That's like a good litmus test that I'm basing my prediction off of. Essentially, both of these guys aren't that good, but Jared Gooden's sloppy as hell. The only redeeming quality he has is power and a good chin. But it's a weird situation with his chin because it's like, you'll see this guy get hit with a big shot. He'll kind of stumble. He'll do like the jitterbug for a second, and then he's fully recovered. And he's gotten hit with a lot of big shots because he's so open on the feet. He keeps his hands down. But essentially, I'm picking Wellington Turman to win this fight just because he has higher volume. Jared Gooden doesn't really throw a lot of strikes. He has these ugly arm punches. He's so sloppy. He doesn't have good footwork, and Wellington Turman's going to leg kick the shit out of him. Gordon is really heavy on his lead leg. One thing I noticed about Wellington Turman, which you guys should definitely watch for. Now, of course, he trains with Alex Pereira, and he's training with a guy that's going to fight after him, Rodolfo Bellato, who looks amazing, by the way. Wellington Turman throws leg kicks exactly how Alex Pereira throws leg kicks. He took the leg kick from Pereira, implemented it into his game. The issue is there's no sting on it whatsoever, right? It's like that leg kick where you barely turn over on your hips. it only works for Pereira. There's a reason why guys turn over on their hips on leg kicks. Not everyone should do it. Like, just because you're not going to telegraph it doesn't mean it's going to be effective. Wellington Turman has the same kind of stance these days, the exact same way of throwing leg kicks, the same fucking haircut. All right? He's basically turned into a mini stubby Alex Pereira with these little stubby T-Rex arms. And he's like a poor man's Pereira with no power and without the hands, without the damaging low kicks. Like, he's got the same technique with the low kicks, but there's no sting on it. I just think that it's mediocrity versus a guy that shouldn't be in the UFC. And because of that, I'm probably going to pick Wellington Turman to get this one done by decision. The only worry that I have is that Wellington Turman's been finished multiple times in his career. He's been knocked out before, like, for example, by Bruno Silva. He knocked him out. But Wellington Turman just had a pretty close fight with Randy Brown, and he's acclimating into this 170-pound weight class. Normally, I would say that a mediocre guy going down to 170 from middleweight is going to be at a skill disadvantage, but Jared Gooden's just about the least skilled fighter he could possibly take on at welterweight. And I think he's going to get it done just via higher volume, slicker low kicks, again, maybe some control time in the clinch. I don't know. This is going to be a stinker. It's not the end of the world if you guys missed this one, but I'm picking Wellington Turman. On to the next one. Rodolfo Bellato, Ihor Potieria, another guy that trains with Alex Pereira in Rodolfo Bellato. He's got like the same Eastern Island head look. Interesting fact about this guy, because he looked phenomenal on his last fight at the Dana White Contender Series. He beat up this Dagestani guy, fought through adversity early, was actually losing the first couple of exchanges in that fight, and just broke this guy in the clinch. Like, it was one of the nastiest displays of clinch work I've seen in a long time. And it was actually a brutal, brutal finish. This guy's a dog. He's tough as fuck, has a great gas tank, extremely hungry, bro. That was like one of the hungriest performances I've ever seen in my entire life. He's been KO'd by Vitor Petrino twice, once on the Dana White Contender Series. So it's like that was probably his last chance. And this is his first chance in the UFC. It just so happens that he's fighting a guy that is your typical NPC that moves around the octagon and hardly doesn't do shit. Okay? Ihor Potieria, what the hell was he doing in his last fight against Carlos Ulberg? The guy wasn't throwing anything. Like, I don't know. I saw him throw one overhand. Yes, he knocked out Shogun earlier this year, but to be honest, man, this guy got dominated by Nikolai Negumereanu as well. And I just think that Nikolai Negumereanu is really similar to Rodolfo Bellato. Nikolai is one of those guys that likes to get in the dirty boxing range in the clinch, and he likes to beat people up there. That's where he's best. Rodolfo Bellato is going to get Ihor Potieria up against the fence, and I think he's going to knock him out with dirty boxing in the clinch, elbows, knees. He's going to make it real nasty. Again, hunger off the charts, and I'm sure Ihor Potieria is really hungry, but he has a little bit of a suspect chin, to be honest, and I just don't see any method to his madness. Like, Bellato may have a little bit of a suspect chin. He's definitely open on the feet. Kind of like Wellington Turman. He's not that good with his hands, but this guy just has this, like, really, really aggressive style. Bellato's going to make this a dogfight, and I kind of favor Bellato after the hungry man's performance that he just had on the Dana White Contender Series. So let's get on to the next one. Melquizael Costa versus Steve Garcia. Guys, this is a must-see fight. This is going to be the fight of the night on the prelims, without a doubt. Two of the most entertaining fighters, two of the most must-see TV fighters on this card. Why is this must-see TV? Steve Garcia has one of the wildest fight styles at 145 pounds. Not many guys KO people at 145. This is a guy that either takes your head off or gets his head taken off in the process. I'm picking Melquizael Costa, and this is why. Only 2 fights in the UFC. I was about to pick Steve Garcia because he's a slugger. He knows how to impose his will. I looked at Melquizael Costa. I saw a bunch of decisions on his record, but then I rewatched his fight with Austin Lingo. He's moving down again from the 155-pound weight class, so now he's settling into featherweight. The way that this guy beat Austin Lingo is incredibly impressive. High output, okay, throughout the entirety of the fight. His kicks are nutty. He's so good at timing people when they're closing the distance and catching them while they come in, and he can do it over the course of 3 rounds, as I said. I think he's going to knock out Steve Garcia, who's got a very suspect chin. Okay, one thing I've noticed while watching Steve Garcia, although this guy is incredibly dangerous, and I think, again, his fight style depends on knocking people the fuck out. Steve Garcia gets dropped in pretty much all of his fights, okay? He's been brutally flatline KO'd by Macedo. Again, if you look at Steve Garcia's opponents, they're the hardest names to pronounce in the history of humanity. So forgive me for butchering Steve Garcia's opponents. He just beat Jalin Turner. I don't even know the fuck to say this stuff. But yeah, Steve Garcia is a problem. He's a menace, okay? He's a menace. Brutally KO'd Chase Hooper last fall. I just think that Melquizael is going to catch him coming in. Melquizael's got a good chin. And Steve Garcia, I think he's going to get head kick KO'd, maybe with a front kick or a high kick. Melquizael is going to be conditioning him to think low, and then he's going to go high. And Garcia's open, man. He's very open. He could KO Melquizael, who, again, hasn't really fought a big power puncher. He could definitely knock him out, but Garcia's open. He's chinny, and I'm picking Melquizael because I just think he's a more skilled striker. Must-watch fight. It's going to be chaos. So, yeah, make sure you tune into this one. We have Drakkar Klose versus Joe Solecki. It wouldn't be the end of the world if you missed out on this one, to be honest. Drakkar Klose, 35 years old. His record looks unreal, but he's not that great, man. He's like a better striker than Joe Solecki, who is got the typical jiu-jitsu tortoise man style on the feet. No athleticism, no quick twitch muscle fibers at all. He's very strong. He's got a good blast double leg. Great timing on his takedowns. I'm still picking Joe Solecki to beat Drakkar Klose. He's 30 years old. Drakkar's 35. Joe Solecki's been more active, okay? The only guy that's beat him is Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon has pretty decent takedown defense, right? And he's like a stocky, very strong guy in that division. He's actually got some pretty underrated striking. And I just don't think that Drakkar Klose, who's also a little bit chinny, is that dangerous. I'm not like trusting in him to chin Joe Solecki, right? Drakkar Klose, he's got some decent strong leg kicks. He's got massive legs, but I don't think he's the better grappler. And I just think that Joe Solecki, who is your typical jiu-jitsu, lay on top, stinkfest guy, or he can get a submission every now and then. I think he's going to impose his will on Drakkar Klose, take him down, get the back, and ride him out to a decision. He will be outstruck on the feet. Make no mistake about it. Joe Solecki's incredibly slow, but he's got really good grappling. He's kind of like the Pat Sabatini of 155 pounds, okay? Great control, good jiu-jitsu, but doesn't have good striking and is not really like the most fun grappler to watch. So I'm picking Joe Solecki via boring decision. Zach Reese versus Cody Brundage. Don't need to know who Zach Reese is. I don't care who Zach Reese is. I know a thing or two about Cody Brundage. Quitter mentality, gave up in his last fight. Who was it that he fought? Robert Whittaker's teammate, really good grappler, Jacob Malkoon, a win on paper, a loss in everyone's heart. Cody Brundage basically quit at the first sign of adversity. I don't remember what happened, but it was like some kind of illegal blow. Maybe it was a fence grab, and Cody Brundage, his stomach hurt because of it. But who gives a fuck? Cody Brundage is one of the lowest IQ, worst skilled fighters in the UFC. He's going to get cut after this one. Zach Reese is taking him out no matter what. This guy's gotten beat by Cedricus Dumas, and they were talking about how Cedricus Dumas was George St. Pierre on the commentary booth. So kind of gives you an idea on how bad Cody Brundage is. He's the kind of guy to spam guillotines every time he gets taken down. Again, no fight IQ, no hustle whatsoever. If he's on his back, he's staying on his back. If he's on the feet, he's got these big sluggy arm punches. Again, quit in his last fight. He has the Aljamain Sterling Award for the year too. So not really a must-see fight, but let's hope Zach Reese can get him out of there because Cody Brundage is just not good at all. On to the next one. We have Clay Guida versus the Arman Tsarukyan killer, Joaquim Silva. Now, I'm going to pick Joaquim Silva, all right? You don't have to be a genius here, all right? Clay Guida is 42 years old. He couldn't finish a fly at this point in his career, but he is kind of tough. He's not easy to put away, but he's much smaller than Joaquim Silva, and Joaquim Silva, to me, looks like he's on the sauce. I mean, he makes Arman Tsarukyan look skinny, and Arman Tsarukyan's like shredded and jacked. Hurt Arman bad in their last fight. Now, Joaquim Silva, the thing is, and this is where it gets interesting, he doesn't have a great chin. He was KO'd by Ricky Glenn, but he's also knocked out Jared Gordon. So it's like he has a good win here. He has a horrible loss there. It kind of makes Arman Tsarukyan's pillow hands seem even more pillow-handed than before, the fact that he couldn't put Joaquim Silva away on the feet. But he still TKO'd him. I think that Clay Guida is probably going to lose this one, though. Of course, he could take him down, and Joaquim can blow his wad early and Clay Guida can take advantage over that and choke him out or something. But I don't see it going down like that. I just seen Joaquim Silva with his size advantage, with his power advantage. I think he's going to just out-damage Clay Guida over the course of 3 rounds. So I'm picking Joaquim Silva. Maybe we could see Clay Guida fight on the early prelims, like the Dana White Contender Series on I don't know. Maybe they'll do a Dana White Contender Series special on UFC 300, all right? Or the day before. Clay Guida's not good enough to be on 300, but I feel like I'm being a little harsh on the guy. I'm just kind of joking around here, but again, he's not UFC 300 material. Let's put Clay Guida in his hometown and let's have him be like the co-main event of a fight night. So let's get on to the next one. Finally, we're at the main card. Punahele Soriano versus Dustin Stoltzfus. I'm going with Punahele Soriano. Dustin Stoltzfus somehow, some way, was able to beat Joe Pyfer on the Dana White Contender Series, which is pretty crazy, but Joe Pyfer just had a freak injury. I think he blew out his elbow or something. His arm snapped. But since then, this guy has gotten beaten by Kyle Dawkins, Gerald Meerschaert, Rodolfo Vieira, right? And he's getting subbed left and right. He got KO'd by Abus Magomedov. His only win in the UFC is Dwight Grant. I think that Punahele Soriano is going to knock this guy out. Now, Punahele's coming off of a loss against Roman Kopylov. That was his last fight. He's taken a lot of time off. He did take a good amount of damage. Roman Kopylov really fucked his body up, put him away. But before that, he knocked out Jolta Lungiambula, who's a big power puncher. All right, he lost to Brendan Allen. He lost to Nick Maximov, but these are both decisions, right? I think that Punahele Soriano, he's hard to finish. Roman Kopylov is a completely different level than Dustin Stoltzfus. And Punahele's got deadly power in his hands. So I think that Punahele's probably going to knock Dustin out in this fight. I'm going to go with a first-round KO. Dustin Stoltzfus, horrible record, shouldn't be in the UFC. Better than Brundage, but not by much, okay? Punahele Soriano is the right pick. He's going to knock this dude out. Let's get on to the next one. Sean Brady, Kelvin Gastelum. This is where it gets interesting. I'm picking Kelvin Gastelum. It's a little bit of a worrisome pick, but this is why, man. Kelvin is a guy that is finally moving back down to 170 pounds. A lot of people are worried that he's not going to make the weight. I'm not that worried, man. This guy is laser focused, right? The last time I saw any bit of Kelvin Gastelum, he was talking to Adesanya at a UFC event, and he was saying, man, remember how you were telling me that you were just so focused, laser focused in the beginning of your career? That's how I feel now. And he's finally making that move back down to 170, which shows that he's picking his discipline up, right? He's finally going all in, and he's not being a lazy bastard in the offseason and eating food to be Big Tubby. I was calling him Big Tubby in the build-up to the Chris Curtis fight. I was wrong, okay? Because Kelvin Gastelum looked like the vintage 2018 Gastelum of old. His chin looks good. And if you look at the guys that he's lost to, we're talking about Darren Till in a very close fight. We're talking about Robert Whittaker, one of the best strikers in the game. Jared Cannonier, like easily a top 4 middleweight without a doubt. He's going down to face Pillow Hands Brady that got TKO'd by Bilal Muhammad, right? And I know that Sean Brady's got a really good grappling base. That's where it gets interesting. But like, who is Sean Brady even beat, man? Who is he beat? And he gets dropped and hurt in like a lot of his fights. His chin is very suspicious. He got hurt by Jake Matthews. He ended up submitting Jake Matthews. Looked real good, but it's Jake Matthews, man. There's just a different level of competition here. Was getting rocked up on the feet by Michael Chiesa. Michael, the stiff man, Chiesa, who has absolutely no stand-up whatsoever. Tired out, gassed out in that fight. Gassed out against Bilal Muhammad and tired out up against the fence. Got TKO'd. I'm picking KG, man. Chris Curtis is way better of a striker than Sean Brady. All right. And I think that Kelvin Gastelum, now that he's moving down, since he's got more discipline than ever before, I think he's going to make weight. I still think he's going to have a decent chin. KG's got the weight to lose. It's not like he's been lean at 185 and he's really going to suck himself down. I think he'll be totally fine. There is a little bit of a worry that he's one of those guys that performs better when he's got more fat on him. But listen, man, I think he's going to get this one done. I think he's going to knock Sean Brady's ass out. Okay. Now, Kelvin Gastelum's been submitted before. We saw it with not Jacare. He actually beat Jacare Souza, stuffed a lot of Jacare's takedowns, but he got submitted by Jack Hermanson, which is not the best look, but Jack Hermanson got him with a heel hook. We haven't really seen anyone sit on his back like that. So unless Sean Brady can wet blanket him or sit on his back, I don't think he's winning this. KG still has decent grappling. He showed that against Ian Heinisch, which was on the Usman and Burns card, by the way. There was a lot of grappling exchanges, very high-paced fight, and that's one thing that I know that KG has. He's got really good cardio, and he can go a hard 3, 4, 5 rounds as well. And this is a guy that's not going to be throwing heat back in his way. This is a guy that doesn't have the best takedowns. He's not got the best wrestling. He's just got really good jiu-jitsu. He's got good control. I think Gastelum has more ways to win. Former wrestler, again, good takedown defense, can push a high pace. Just had a really good-looking performance against Chris Curtis, who's a dangerous guy who's got a lot of power, good dirty boxing, and that's kind of where Kelvin Gastelum is good. So I think Gastelum's going to knock out Sean Brady, and I'm going to pick him to knock him out in the first round. Okay, I'll go with Kelvin Gastelum, first or second round KO. Rob Font, Deiveson Figueiredo. This is a matchup that I absolutely love, but I'm also very confident in this pick, all right? I'm picking Rob Font, all right? And I think he's going to dust up Deiveson Figueiredo, and I think he's going to brutally knock him out, all right? And I think he's going to knock him out with the right hand. I rewatched Deiveson Figueiredo's past couple of fights. The trilogy that he had with Brandon Moreno, amazing work. Perfect game plan, well-rounded approach. His grappling looked good. His leg kicks were there. His striking looked great. Remember, the leg kicks is what he really used to catapult him to success in that fight. I rewatched the fourth fight that he had with Moreno. It looked like he was Woodley out there. It looked like he had resorted to the frozen ones strategy. No low kicks whatsoever. No volume at all. It looks like this guy is winding up so much. It looks like he's trying to throw a baseball at his opponent, right? He's just winding up. He's not throwing anything. He's waiting for the perfect moment. He's waiting for the perfect moment, and then he gets caught right before he throws his shots with these big windups. And I just see that the accuracy is falling off. He couldn't graze the chin of Brandon Moreno at all. The volume isn't there. The leg kicks, I don't know what the fuck's going on with his legs, but he's forgetting that he has them. I don't know, man. That was a really, really shitty-looking performance from Deiveson Figueiredo. I feel like he's out there just waiting for the perfect shot. And I don't know if you can do that in front of a guy like Rob Font, right? Because Figueiredo was a guy that back in the day had this granite chin. He could just walk people down, accept a lot of damage, eat a couple of shots to land one of his own. And his own is gnarly, right? I don't think he has that ability anymore because he's had a bunch of wars with Moreno, right? He's taken a shitload of damage. He's not fought that much over the course of the past couple of years. Yeah, he is moving up a weight class, and I've seen some photos of him. I'm actually surprised at how lean this guy is at 135 because I was thinking, I know this guy has a massive weight cut to begin with, but he's not going to look as shredded. He looks just as shredded, man. So he's going to be strong at 135 pounds. I just think he's going to get brutalized by Rob Font. I think that Rob Font, who's got a massive reach advantage. I'm pretty sure Font has like a 4.5-inch reach advantage here. He's got big hands. He's a big bantamweight. And yeah, Figueiredo's a former champion, but like how many flyweights are there? Right? Usually when a guy moves up into a bigger weight class, they have a bit of a skill advantage. But bantamweight, there are more guys that are around that bantamweight size. Is a lot more competition. Right? There's probably like 80 bantamweights on the UFC roster. There's probably like 25 flyweights. I don't think there's going to be a big skill gap at all. I actually think Rob Font, although he's not as well-rounded, although we just saw him get exposed by Corey Sandhagen, and we've kind of seen his takedown defense look decent in the past. Like, it's not like Rob Font always gets destroyed on the ground. He actually has a submission game. He's been able to stuff takedowns from like big, powerful wrestlers like Cody Garbrandt. He got taken down by Corey Sandhagen, who's a big guy who is, who's doing everything in his power to hold him to the ground no matter what. But Font looks so good on the feet. And I just see his volume. I see him blinding the vision of Deiveson Figueiredo, who's going to be out there trying to throw that baseball. He looks like a fucking pitcher out there. He's going to be winding up, and he's going to be getting caught by crisp Rob Font jabs, long, rangy jabs. And I think Rob Font's going to follow up with a big right hand. Deiveson Figueiredo, who gets dropped pretty easily these days, he's not going to eat the power so well. There's an argument that he will be less drained because now he's moving up a division, but I think he's going to get blitzkrieged, honestly. I don't think Deiveson Figueiredo is going to do well. His only chance to win this fight, in my opinion, and not his only chance, but the only likely chance to win this fight is to mix in the takedowns, right? But his takedowns don't even look that great either, man. I think he's got to mix in the takedowns. If not, he's going to get blasted with the Rob Font jab. He's going to get overwhelmed with the volume. And Moreno is a guy that was capitalizing on these big windups. Rob Font's got like twice the reach of Brandon Moreno. He's got, again, in my opinion, he's got bigger power too. Of course, if Deiveson can tag Rob Font, he can make him do the chicken dance. But Rob Font's not an easy guy to finish like that, right? And this is not Cheeto Vera, who's got the thick hide, the unbreakable skull, never been dropped, never been wobbled. It's Deiveson Figueiredo, who's older now, who's taken a lot of damage, whose best years are behind, and he's just shown such a horrible version of himself in his last fight. No IQ, no ability to throw kicks anymore for whatever reason. Rob Font's going to fuck this man up at range, and I think he's going to knock him out. Font gets it done. First or second round KO. So let's get on to the next one. Jalin Turner versus Bobby Green. This is a really good one, but I'm going to go with Jalin Turner. There's a little bit of a worry that I have that he's going to get beat up in the third round if he gasses out. But this is a very unpopular opinion that I'm about to give. I think he beat Dan Hooker. I'm sorry, man. I think he beat Hooker. Straight up. I just rewatched that fight. I know Dan Hooker surprised a lot of us. This has nothing to do with who I picked to win that fight. Hooker had a 30-second moment at the end of the second round. Didn't even drop Jalin Turner. Jalin Turner was winning the entirety of the second round. Turner definitely won the first round. The second round, that's actually where Turner head kicked and broke the face of Dan Hooker. And then, of course, the third round was pretty dominant. It looked like Turner was just trying to survive. He got dropped in that round. But, like, listen, man, I don't think you might be able to call that a 10-8. And if that's a 10-8, it should have been a draw. But I don't think that Dan Hooker won that fight. I think they gave him to that. I think they gave him the win because it was like pity points. Oh, what a good comeback. Good comeback for the old man Hooker. Jalin Turner honestly should have either gotten a draw, or if that third round's on a 10-8, he should have won. Rewatch that fight back and tell me Dan Hooker wins the third round when he's got 30 seconds of success. I know there was a lot of success. He didn't drop him. Okay, he stumbled him back a couple of times, and that was it. Jalin Turner is a guy that's going to go out here, and I think he's going to be a serious threat to Bobby Green. All right, Bobby Green's been knocked out earlier this year brutally. He's been knocked out in the past. Yeah, he's got really slick hands, man. Yeah, he could go out there and chin Jalin Turner, who's going to have a really difficult weight cut, who's going to be drained, taking this fight on 7 days' notice. I mean, who the hell saw him knocking out Grant Dawson? Anything's possible these days with Bobby Green. I want Bobby Green to win too because I just like him a lot more. But I think Jalin Turner is going to knock him out first round. Whether or not that's a head kick or just a straight left down the pipe, Bobby Green gets dropped quite a bit in his fights, right? Knocked out a bunch of times in his career, got dropped against Tony Ferguson, was getting pieced up by Jared Gordon. And I think that Jalin Turner does his best work when he plants his feet and throws, or when he moves forward. And I know that Bobby Green really wants people to move forward, but for the most part, Bobby Green doesn't have like punishing power, and he's facing a guy that has a much longer reach than him, that's got a much bigger frame, that's much taller. Turner's got a 77-inch reach, and Bobby Green is a 71-inch reach, all right? The power advantage is with Jalin Turner. Yes, I could totally see Bobby Green getting the better of Jalin in the third round if he survives. I just don't know if he's going to be able to not get hit, and that's kind of why I was going to pick Dan Hooker to beat him, even though, again, I prefer Bobby Green. I like his style more. He's still got his speed in the latter half of his career. It's just that with guys that are super durable, that have a lot of power, that are also like pretty damn decent strikers, I think they beat Bobby Green at this point, man. And I think, again, Jalin Turner's a guy that on paper it says he's got back-to-back losses. Both of those fights were very close, and he shouldn't have lost that fight to Dan Hooker. Straight up. Again, pity win. Pity win for Hooker. All right, he looked good, and he proved me wrong. Doesn't change the fact that he didn't win that shit. You could say it's a bad take all you want. Go and rewatch the fight. Watch the second round, then speak on it. But I think Jalin Turner is going to knock him out, man. I think he's going to knock him out. He can take the Bobby Green pillow hands. He's going to get countered hard. That's kind of where Jalin Turner has an Achilles heel. He doesn't really move his head all that much, so he's going to be getting countered while he's moving forward. I just see him cracking Bobby with a left hand, cracking him with a head kick. He's going to be going to Bobby's body as well. Bobby's body. He's going to be going to the body with low kicks, with fucking body kicks, roundhouse kicks. And it's like, who the hell actually goes to the body on Bobby Green that much? No one really decides to kick him there. So I think that's going to slow him down massively. That's going to bring his hands further down than they already are because his hands are always low. And I just don't think he's going to be able to take the power of Jalin Turner. So Jalin Turner is going to win this one by a first-round KO. I want Bobby to get it done. I don't think he's going to. Even though he could definitely come on strong in the latter half of this fight. If Jalin Turner gasses out hard, maybe Bobby can put him away. But I just don't see Bobby Green surviving the early onslaught. So I'm going with Turner. Let's move on to the main event. I'm picking Beneil Dariush. He's getting it done. And this is what it comes down to. I don't think there's going to be a lot of grappling exchanges. And I think that Beneil Dariush is the much better striker, and I think he's much more effective. Now, we're going to talk about the KO loss that he had to Charles. We're going to talk about Arman Tsarukyan's wins and losses. But the one thing that I really want to get at first is the fact that, yes, Arman Tsarukyan's really good when he gets on top of guys. He has great ground and pound. He has good control. But for a guy like Beneil Dariush, although he may not be the most dangerous man on the ground as far as submissions and ground and pound TKOs go, I think he's got like the perfect style for defensive grappling, okay? He's got like the perfect anti-grappling style, the epitome of position before submission, the epitome of like having this great awareness on the ground. He out-scrambles guys. He's very flexible. He's crafty on the ground, all right? And I mean that. I think he's going to be able to shut down the grappling of Arman. I mean, he shut down the grappling of Mateusz Gamrot. Yes, he was on top of Charles and he was getting his ass kicked when Charles was on bottom, but Charles Oliveira is good everywhere. He's good everywhere on the ground, on his back, on top of guys. He's got ground and pound. He's got submissions. Charles is like the best grappler in the sport. Arman's very good, but he's only good in like a couple of positions. And I think that Beneil Dariush has a hell of a scramble on him. I think he's going to nullify the grappling, okay? Because his defense is so on point down there. Because he's the position before submission guy. And on the feet, the reason why I think Beneil Dariush outstrikes Arman Tsarukyan is because when I watch Arman strike, I see a guy that's still green. He's still really jittery. And the way that he copes with it is just by throwing the kitchen sink at his opponents, right? Flustering them, tons of volume, very fast twitch. He's got like these great kicks, roundhouse kicks, like flashy head kicks, question mark kicks. But there's not really a method to the madness, man. There really isn't. It's just kind of him biding time before he can shoot a takedown. And he doesn't have any power, man. It's like this guy has some of the nicest looking roundhouse kicks. There's just no effect on his opponents. He's knocked out one guy in the UFC, like on the feet. I think it was Christos Giagos. Really good shot, but it's like just a totally different level of competition. He's open on the feet, very open on the feet to getting hit. Doesn't have the best defense, doesn't have good hands. Although he outstruck Mateusz Gamrot, he was getting outboxed. Like he was getting tagged quite a bit, and Gamrot doesn't have a lot of power. One thing we know about Beneil, even though he's very slow twitch, and I'm going to be honest, guys. I'm going to be honest. I shouldn't have picked Beneil Dariush to beat Charles. I rewatched this fight with Gamrot, and my first reaction was, how the fuck did I pick this guy? Like, I thought way too deeply. I should have just used the eye test and knew Charles was going to go out there and fucking blitzkrieg him because Beneil Dariush is a bit of a slow starter, and he's slow as hell. But Beneil has tons of power in his kicks, right? He's effective there. And I hate to say this, but he's crafty, all right? Daniel Cormier literally said on commentary during the Mateusz Gamrot fight, and I think Beneil was like off balance and Gamrot was like closing the distance, and Beneil with an off balance punch like clips Gamrot. It's like a really awkward angle, the opposite of fast twitch, like a snapback counter. It wasn't that. It was like an ugly looking off balance punch, and DC starts saying he's crafty. Beneil Dariush is pretty crafty. And he is, because he makes the most out of like any little opening on the feet. Remember in the Gamrot fight, Gamrot spamming takedowns out there. Doesn't have the better wrestling than Arman. But one of the ways Beneil slowed him down, aside from kicking the shit out of him with roundhouse kicks to the body and leg kicks, he's got very powerful kicks, is he was kneeing Mateusz Gamrot every time he'd close the distance. Like timing knees up the middle, on the solar plexus, right on the ribs, the chest, the body. Brutal knees, and that really slowed him down, man. And as the fight progressed, we saw Beneil just kind of start to find a flow, and he was just beating Gamrot to the punch and landing 3 punches for every one of Gamrot's, and he was just really far ahead, shutting down the grappling. Again, perfect awareness on the ground. I think that there is a chance Arman could head kick him because he's got really fast head kicks. He's really quick. Not a lot of power, but it's like if you land the right head kick, you can get someone out of there. I could see Arman slipping a head kick over the guard. Maybe Beneil isn't going to be so turned on. He's a bit of a slow starter. He's not going to be so turned on early, and maybe the head kick will go over Beneil's arms before he can get them up. But if that doesn't happen, I think Beneil's going to have a rough first round when it comes to like fending off takedowns, but I think he'll be able to scramble up to his feet, get Arman in uncomfortable positions, maybe even control Arman Tsarukyan. And as the fight goes on, I think Beneil's just going to be more effective. I think he's just going to outdamage Arman Tsarukyan with body kicks, with leg kicks. So I'm going to go with Beneil Dariush to get this one done by decision. And again, Arman, he can get hurt. He's open on the feet. If Beneil Dariush lands one of those big overhand lefts, he could knock out Arman as well. So I'm not picking Beneil just because he's like a massive step up, because at the end of the day, yeah, he's got a lot of decent wins, but he doesn't have like a huge win outside of Mateusz Gamrot. And Arman's got a lot of wins that are kind of on par, and he also kind of beat Mateusz. Not as impressively, though. I just don't think this is a good matchup for Arman Tsarukyan. I don't like his striking. I just don't. It's, again, jittery, green, not confident. And I think Beneil Dariush, I think he's going to get him out of there. Let's talk about the KO. Not out of there with a finish, but I think he's going to beat him by decision. A lot of people doubted Justin Gaethje after he got finished by Charles Oliveira. Remember, he got sent flying across the octagon. If you pair that with all of the losses that Justin Gaethje has, where he takes a shitload of damage, a lot of people were saying, this guy's done. He's punch drunk. Fiziv's going to fucking slip him onto a head kick and ruin this guy, right? A lot of us were confident that Fiziv was going to beat him. And I was too when that fight was first announced, up until I started watching more Gaethje tape and whatnot. But a lot of us thought Gaethje was done. Look at what he's been able to do. Bounced back, got hit by Fiziv. Not a lot of power in his hands, but more power than Arman. Took the power just fine. Went in there with Dustin Poirier. Took the power just fine. Knocks him out. Charles Oliveira has like a different kind of power, man. And just because Charles blows Beneil out of the water, because that's just how his style is, if Charles beats you, that's how he's going to get it done. If he goes out there and knocks out Beneil Dariush, that does not mean Arman Tsarukyan is going to knock out Beneil Dariush. I get it. Beneil's a little bit older, but he's not that old. He just looks super old. I think he's like 34. A year older than Charles, basically. Beneil, if he's not getting hit by this shotgun-like power from Charles, I think he'll be just fine, man. You never know. Sometimes a guy can lose their chin, but he's been knocked out in the past. I think Charles is just a completely different power puncher than Pillow Hands Arman. So I think he's going to be fine. And I think it's a similar situation where we're totally writing off Beneil Dariush. Yes, he's slow twitch. Yes, I shouldn't have picked him to beat Charles, but I don't like Arman Tsarukyan striking. Looks very flashy, not very effective. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time.